It sounds like you really love building, whether that's building a business, building real estate, whatever the case is. And I know you're obviously very strategic the way you were able to scale Build-A-Bear and some of your other endeavors. So was the ability to build again one of the factors for wanting to jump into Build-A-Bear after having such a distinguished retail career? I know there's a Beanie Baby story that kind of comes into play here as well, but I would imagine as you work up or go up the corporate ladder, you're less involved in the building phase or maybe being able to be creative. Is that one of the reasons why in your 40s you decided to take the risk of entrepreneurship?
Well, I was very entrepreneurial working for the May Company. We owned Payless Shoe Source, and I was the president of that for 4 years. And we grew from one store, Payless Kids, to all across the country within our own company. You know, like there's lots of things. I was doing entrepreneurship on somebody else's nickel, so I knew I was always good at it. That's why I was successful. I had ideas, and I was willing to try them and then scale them. And when you're doing it on somebody else's money, it might seem a little bit easier because it's not your money, it's not your risk. But if you aren't successful, don't have a job anymore. So there is a risk involved. But I was always good at that. And again, back to loving to go on field trips and seeing how things are made. I ask a million questions. I don't just go into it without, it's my idea and I'm doing it. That's not it. You really need to have community involved, whoever that community is, your customers. And my first board of directors for Build-A-Bear was children. But I left May Company when they spun off Payless as a separate company, and I was going to finally I said, I'm going to do my own thing. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's 1996, and the world is changing rapidly with the use of computers, and everything was becoming high-tech versus high-touch. And I felt it was time. Still people wanted that connection, and that doing something for children, I had a really big idea. That was complicated because of children's privacy. But I love this idea of a child walking into a store, and the door would know because of a little badge the child had that said, "Hi, Mary, how are you? Welcome back. How is did you finish that book that you bought here?" Things like that kids would feel welcome. Because, it's when you go to a store and they say hi to you, or it's your birthday and they give you a special gift, you feel special. And we've kind of forgotten some of those things, even more so lately post-COVID than pre-COVID. But so I wanted to create that special place. And what I wanted to do was really expensive. I was talking to Microsoft about it, and we didn't even have all the COPA laws and things for children's privacy that we have now. But imagine how much information we could have gathered, and we would have only used it for good. But then that Katie and Jack and I went looking for Beanie Babies after school one day, and when she couldn't find the one she wanted, and she said, these are so easy. We could make these. The light bulb. I had a light bulb Willy Wonka moment in my head, which I had for every other idea I had prior, and had for the same thing here. I can see it really clearly in my head, and then it's easier to write that business plan to make that vision, come through. And vision, it's a real vision. I can go and sketch it, not perfectly, but I can kind of give you an idea of what it looked like. And the kids went down to pull out all the craft supplies because that's what they thought we were going to do, and I went upstairs and was Netscaping because it was very slow, and looking for a business I could buy because I didn't think you had to invent it. And that's another thing that I tell people, that there are a lot of businesses that there's an owner looking to sell that business, and you could take it, an existing business and something that you're interested in, and turn it into a 21st century business. How many stories have we heard? Bob Clark, who's the owner of Clayco, it was his family business, but it was a small business. I think it was a painting contractor. And look what he turned it into. Wow. Imagine those. There's so many businesses looking for a new owner. We were just talking about that before. And what a person with vision and caring for human beings and seeing possibility could create from that existing business. I couldn't find one. I did try. There were several businesses that were in the manufacturing of teddy bears, but they wouldn't sell to me. They thought I was crazy. So Katie said, "Why don't we do it?" And I thought, why not? Why not? There was no reason not to, really. And we went about doing it. And 9 months later, we opened our first store at the St. Louis Galleria. This project, from idea to reality, was about 9 years. So when you're trying to do good and save a building and save a neighborhood, it's a little bit more complicated than just opening one store. Even if I had a business plan for, I should have brought it in here. I have a bound copy of my business plan, a 10-year business plan that was well laid out, that I had to convince myself first that it's worth doing before you could convince the banker, the landlord, all the other people that you have to talk about in a process of building a business. But I knew how to do it on somebody else's nickel. I just had never had to do it myself. But I wasn't alone. I could call everybody I ever knew in the May Company. And that's what I did do. I said, could you give me a place for somebody who I could talk to about logistics? Could you give me, because it was all around me. I didn't have to do any of that. I didn't have to worry about the warehouse. I didn't have to worry about how things got there. They gave us a purchase order. Gave it to the vendor. It told them where to ship it. Everything was pretty much laid out. And unless you were in that department, you didn't really have to dig in too much, even though I probably dug in more than most because I was nosy, wanted to know how it worked. But it isn't that complicated. I think people make things overly complicated. Everything doesn't have to be on this. Build-A-Bear was one store. This was, yes, 9 buildings, and it was a big project real estate-wise to take over. That wasn't the hard part. The hard part was all the technical stuff to build it and reimagine it and make it safe for the 21st century, get rid of all the bad things that were in the building and put in the good things, make it seem more connected than just buildings that were cut and pasted together. You know this as a person who works in development. But that's the fun of figuring it out. It's like a big, giant puzzle, and we work on that. That's how we think about it, is one piece at a time. How can we connect those 2 pieces, those 2 people? This room here, we have many, many meetings to bring people together who are want more help on what they're doing and are willing to work with somebody else, but don't know who those people are. We can do that. That's one of the advantages of being a mature person. I've met a lot of people in my life, and that's the easiest part of what I do, is connecting someone to each other so they can do 1 + 1 = 100. It doesn't always have to be me. And sometimes 1 + 1 can be 1,000 when it's the right people getting together and have the speed and the financial wherewithal to act more quickly for the good of St. Louis. But overall, ideas come from everywhere. Wherever I go, I'm looking for an idea. I'm taking a picture. Now that we have these devices, I can take a picture of it, so I don't have to forget it. And I remember going into stores, copying, looking for ideas in a retail store, and you had to have a little tiny camera, and then you had to wait to get it developed. And now you can nobody even stops you to ask you what you're doing. And I just put them in my file. I have a folder of ideas, and I'll use them eventually. Although maybe the right project hasn't come to me yet. But I see, as I travel around St. Louis, I could talk about this forever. So many potential projects based on the history and culture of the neighborhood where that building is or was or is falling apart in. And I'm working on that. That's one of my next goals. After we finish phase 2 here, is I have a couple of ideas of how we can further bring opportunity from all over the country, actually, into the heritage of St. Louis, because it's part of our heritage. And I work with Arch Grants. I'm on the board of Arch Grants, and I work with a lot of entrepreneurs at Washington University. That's where it's at. It's a network for teaching entrepreneurship, which is in high schools, is encouraging these young people to stay vested in St. Louis and to realize that their idea if my idea could come to be in St. Louis, their idea could come to be in St. Louis too. There's nothing in the way of that. Just you have to be willing to write a plan and move and groove with that plan. And most people write a PowerPoint now. They don't really write a detailed plan. But if you aren't convinced and you don't know what you're doing, you won't know what you don't know, and you won't hire the right people to help you do what you don't know. And that's one of my other strengths, is I know what I don't know, and that's related to the curiosity. But I'm always willing to learn, and I feel that's what maybe my biggest strength is. My superpower is the curiosity, but my strength is I know I don't know it all, and I'm learning it every day from the people that live in this neighborhood, the young people that work in this building, the students that I come in touch with. They keep you moving and they keep you young. And I hope I did that for people too when I was in their place, that I was sharing what I learned. And I have so many young friends, a young art student at Washington University who was here this summer working in in an entrepreneurial company, not here at Del Mar Divine, but in St. Louis through the Scandalaris Center. And he called me up after the meeting and he said, I have an idea. And he came over and met me and he showed me what he does. His name is Mac Barnes, and he's a quilter, but not a quilter that you would wear on your bed, like a warm quilt. He does art. And he's actually a computer science major. And when he came to St. Louis, he's a sophomore. When he came to St. Louis as a freshman, he discovered that he could use computers in art as well. And he had a background. His mother, his grandmother, his family members were artists. And so he started to put that to work. But he had an idea to do a quilt based on the history of Del Mar Divine that we could use here. And that's going to come to be this year. And he went and found a grant, and he has an idea, and we're going to bring neighbors and students from Crossroads High School, and everybody's going to come together. So this will be like an old-fashioned quilt where people used to sit and quilt together and tell stories. Women who were doing this, they were telling a family story. We're going to tell a story not necessarily of our families, but of other families that have lived here and live here today. So we're very excited about that project. And it just takes a minute, to make a connection. And all that will be done in probably by the time that we would have met for a year. So he came here last summer, and we'll have it done by then probably. And so, or close to that. And you say, see, that's not very long, right? A year is nothing in the life of a student or in the life of a community like Del Mar. So what a blessing it is for me, actually, to be able to take a student's idea like that and then help him bring it into reality, but it benefits our community in more ways than I can even imagine right now, even sitting, and I have a big imagination.